Welcome back from on top of the wall. Hello everybody. I can't believe you're back for another deck tech. Today is Xtort for DaZ. And this deck is this attrition-y, life gain, drain your opponent out deck that involves the Xtort mechanic and playing a lot of 1-for-1s that slowly whittle out your opponent and slow the game down. And every time you're just gaining life, you poke for a creature, you gain life. So no matter if they're playing aggro or whatever they have it, as long as you are able to start the chain reaction of just like gaining an instant of life, they lose a life, putting this big gap between you and them, and slowly pushing them out of the game, this deck is actually just a ton of fun. I made it just for me to just dirtle around with, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy the sideboard stuff, the ton of one-for-ones in the sideboard. Xtort is from the Return to Ravnica set, so from anybody who's played through then to now and played all the way through it, alright, there's all my old school brethren. Oh, glad to meet you. Glad to see you on the channel. Welcome. So the way that Xtort works is whenever you cast a spell, it triggers, you put the trigger onto the stack, and you can pay white or a black as it resolves, and then you can drain your opponent for 1, you gain 1. And you do this for each Xtort permanent on the battlefield. So to maximize the value of Xtort and really get that this whole drain thing going, what you have to do is you have to put a lot of permanents on the battlefield and have to invest a lot of permanents out there. You have to reduce your hand size, you have to play the game and spend a lot of mana building up to this. You're looking at a longer game. What we're planning on doing is we're planning on disrupting our opponent in the early game, playing these larger creatures, these creatures with decent bodies to stabilize, and draining our opponent out to build up a board presence for this deck. We have 18 creatures. We have 14 different Xtort creatures. We have 4 Basilica Guards, 4 Basilica Screechers, 4 Kingpin's Pet, and 2 Syndic of Ties. All of these creatures give us a variety of blockers, from flyers to larger ground creatures with big butts like Basilica Guards. It's a 1/4 defender. Basilica Screecher is a 1/2 flyer that can eat fairies. Kingpin's Pet is a 2/2 that can trade with a Delver. And the 2 Syndicate of Ties is because we needed more Xtort creatures primarily. And these creatures are good blockers that come down earlier and usually can hold off Goblin Cohort, can hold off your stomping creatures back, and can help stabilize us, and preventing all of those tokens and creatures coming through while draining our opponent for X. And the more creatures we have on the battlefield, the more X can be. We also have 4 Thraben Inspectors. Speaking of stabilizing, this creature is a 1 mana, 1/2, enters battlefield. We investigate, which means you make a clue token, and the artifact clue token says you can sacrifice it by paying 2 mana and draw a card. So it's a card that cycles, it's another card that helps us get to the long game. Because of all the life gain that we have and the likeliness that we are going to stabilize and have a lot of more life than our opponent over a game, we have 3 survival caches. It is a 3 mana card. It says we gain 2 life, and if we can have more life than an opponent, we draw a card, and it has rebound. So it is potentially a 2-for-1 that also gains us some life. We have 1 Unearth, which in the late game, as our graveyard gets stacked and stacked higher, we get more options, more of our creatures to choose from to put into play, which means this 1 mana card can put any of our cards, any of our creature cards from the graveyard into play, or cycle it in the early if it's not the right time for it. Starting with our removal, we're going to play 4 Castigate. It is some good hand disruption. Exiles a card from our opponent's hand. We get that information. We can disrupt them earlier. It is unconditional. Then we got 3 Funeral Charms. It is a 1 black instant card. Target player discards a card. Target creature gains Swamp Walk, or target creature gets +2/-1 until end of turn. This 1 mana spell in the late game, when we top deck it, it's a 1-for-1 against our opponent on their draw step, so we can make them discard a card from their hand as they draw it. And then we also get all of those Xtort triggers put onto the stack, and we can drain our opponent again. Same thing with our Diabolic Edicts. It is an unconditional 1-for-1. They are cheap. Same with Doomblade, but the Doomblade allows us to target a creature. We got 2 Journey to Nowhere. Because of how much mana we're sinking into each spell that we cast every single turn, and we're really trying to tap out every turn, we are trying to play more instants than sorcery speed cards and really maximize our ability to choose when we go all in on something. We want to be spending as little mana as possible on these spells and maximize the ability for us to pay that X. And 1 Conviction. The Conviction is there primarily to help keep us with a larger creature on the battlefield. We can put it on Syndictive Ties, any of the creatures, and have this massive blocker. And we get to recast Conviction every single turn that we choose. We draw a land that turn with an empty hand. We return Conviction to our hand, replay Conviction, and pay the X. And to help us pay for all this, and with all the mana sinks available to us, we are playing 23 lands, even though most of our cards are lower curve and lower cost spells. Xtort is very expensive. We're playing 23 lands. 7 plains, 6 swamps, and 4 Sacred Barrens fix our mana. 3 Orzhov Basilicas, 2 Cabera Crossroads, and 1 Bojuka Bog. The Bojuka Bog, it hates on graveyards. The Cabera Crossroads helps us gain life against aggro and any kind of burn deck, stabilizing us. And the Orzhov Basilica can pick them up, reset them, and put us a little bit farther ahead on mana, make sure that we hit our land drops constantly. As you may note about our sideboard is cards I think are cool and really don't get the chance to play with, but really would like to play them because they do have relevance. We're going to start with our stabilizing package that we put into our deck to help us really play up against any kind of aggro deck or burn deck or something that's really aggressive towards us, with Augur of Ilvec, 1 Kami of False Hope, and 3 Fanbearers. Augur of Ilvec is there for the life gain and for a good block in the early game. The 3 Fanbearers are there to help keep larger creatures tapped down. I don't care how little you paid for that 3/3 or how good that creature is, how many Rancors are stacked on that one creature. I don't care. No, it stays tapped. You're not getting that Rancor back, you're not getting that creature back. It's stuck like that. And a good old fog creature to help fight through enchantment and artifact decks. We have a Dusted Us for affinity, we have 2 disenchants as an in-between, and we have 1 Devout Harpist. The Devout Harpist, it's just a 1/1 for 2, but you can tap it, destroy target enchantment. So you require Boggles to have an answer immediately. We also have some added removal here for creatures specifically. 2 Echoing Decay to fight through tokens. We have a Chainer's Edict. To hit on our opponent's graveyard, we got 1 Marrow Bone Gnawer. And for our graveyard, to help us synergize and get farther into the late game, we have 1 Grim Harvest. To finish it off, we have 1 Standard Bearer to eat removal. Alright, that's it for this deck tech. I'm really glad I got to do this one. I need to do a fun one for once. The last one was kind of competitive, and I do a lot of competitive decks. Don't worry, there's going to be more next week. As always, at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. Don't forget to tune in, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Going in for that face touch.